Okay, when I started working there, I would be at work at 4 a.m. in the mornings, as any of the yard people were. And the yard people, which I start out at, were the ones that were out in the yards gathering the cattle from the truck chutes or the chute house that came in by rail, taking them to our respective pens where we were assigned, and we would take them there. We would sort them. When I say sort them, oftentimes a farmer would ship in 6 steers and 6 heifers. Well, we didn't keep the 6 steers and the 6 heifers together. We would sort off the 6 heifers and the 6 steers and put them in. Why?
Why? Yeah.
Different values.
Okay.
Different values. The steers usually were worth more money per pound than a heifer. And then there were some of the buyers, the packers, only wanted steers or only wanted heifers. Okay, then we would get those cattle ready, like I say, from 4 till 8 a.m. We knew after a while you get there, you know that the good cattle, the steers, they go up in the show alley, which is where the larger pens for the better cattle are shown. You always want to put your cattle in a pen that's advantageous to them. If you had great big cattle, and they weren't looking for big cattle, you'd put them down in a pen that had a low bottom because they just didn't look like they were that big against the back of the pen. Well, there's a lot of fence sticking above those cattle. And that's what was done. We learned that, tricks of the trade. It's kind of funny. What was the danger? Okay, a lone cow was a vicious animal. Now, and we always used to chuckle about this. The cow would be home when it was home in somewhere in Nebraska or Iowa. The owner would say, "Well, that cow's never bought a thing in her life. She's just a little old dairy cow." Well, that cow has been disrupted from her lifestyle, and she's gotten down to where all these other animals are mooing and bellowing, and people are hollering, and they get real anxious sometimes. You learn to read the cattle. You can tell by their eyes and the way they're moving their heads, and if they're flared, we call the flared nostril. You see that, you better be on your gear because you might have to head for a fence. We were usually done with our chores and tasks, 7:30, and then we would wait for the market to open. The market by regulation couldn't open until 8 or even 9 o'clock. It depended on, seems to me it was 9 o'clock in the winter and 8 o'clock in the summer. Then we would probably take our coffee break and go back downstairs, work our way down to the exchange building on the first floor. We'd go down there for breakfast lots of times. But then we would, hurry up and wolf down our coffee and brag about our exploits from the weekend and things like that. And then go back out to the yards. And if it was a hot market, in other words, if the packers wanted cattle quickly and needed cattle, they would pay the price, which was usually that was what would make a higher market. Okay, then we would sort those take the cattle, and we would get what we call a turn at the scale to weigh the cattle. We would get a hold of the number man. The number man, why they call him that? Because he regulated the numbers. Whoever got him first, whether it was my commission firm or the one across the alley or down the alley, we got the first turn to weigh cattle. We would weigh them and keep track of them for ownership. If a load of, say, slaughter steers, the high prime, better kinds of cattle, we would weigh perhaps 25 or 30 of them at one time. And the scale is where ownership changed. They would go on the one end of the scale belonging to Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They'd come off the other end of the scale belonging to Armour or Swift or Cudahy or Wilson. And that was the point of sale right there. Yes, most of the packing houses were right there. If the packer needed cattle right away, they would take them immediately and walk them to their respective plants. Armour, Cudahy, Swift, Wilson, which the big four then, and they would take the cattle, most of the cattle, off of the market in a particular day. Then we would go back, and of course there would be more sales. Then most commission firms had a steer salesman. That was the top. You know, if you were a steer salesman, you were right up there alongside of God in the stratosphere of the stockyards. And then there was a heifer salesman. He was okay. And then it got down into cows and bulls and calves. And those cattle, then they would be weighed later. And when the day was done and all the cattle were sold and weighed, then the yardmen, which is where I started, we would go down to the truck chutes and or the rail chutes and check on incoming cattle to see if any of them were ours, that we could take then up to the pens and have them rested overnight. And then when that was all done, then we got to go and take off and do our social life, which the stockyards was a great place to do it because there was many, many times. Like I say, get to work at 4 o'clock. To this day, I still get up early.